Alright, hey everyone! Today, as soon as I find my... where did my brush go? Alright, I think this is the one. Today we're working some more on the Judgement models of Viktor, the Halfling Warlock, and Algorath, his summonable demon companion monster thing. Anyway, he's a warlock. He summons demons. Viktor is the original one. There is another demon coming out at Warfare Weekend in November. Is Dorgu Khan, who is a bigger, badder demon that Viktor can summon on larger maps. However, of course, Algorath will always be an option. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start a little bit on Viktor and finish the green that I was working on. And then after that, I'll kind of set him aside. The rest of his stuff, I think I'm probably just going to do black, which is kind of hard to see on camera. And he's already going to have some... he's got some pretty vivid colors as it is. So I'm going to go ahead and do a quick shadow and then some highlights on the green. And then we're going to work on Algorath, our scary, very scary demon friend, who I will probably make look, you know, red and infernal and demony. So quick little steps on Viktor here, and then moving on to Algorath. I'm gonna get out, I did Viktor's shirt in the Chimera Fallow Green. So I'm gonna get out a little more of that. We're gonna mix some shadow. And then some highlight with just white, because I love how powerful the green is and I want it to really pop. So for the shadow, I'm actually going to add a little bit of violet to this green. It is a lovely dark violet, and green and purples tend to play kind of nicely with each other, especially like the purple to darken a green. So we're gonna go ahead and get some shadows on. I already have a dog hair in my mouth. I live with a Siberian Husky who, her name is Sorsha, and she's my baby. But her hair does get everywhere. So I'm kind of more placing, glazing some of these shadows. You know, I want to make sure that I'm getting under and in some of these folds with this dark, like, green violet. And then he's got some seams here on the side of his sleeve and then along the edge of like the tunic part of his shirt. And then I always, I have a blending brush in my mouth just to sort of help feather out any edges or hard lines that I leave. And that's just kind of one of the ways that I learned to paint miniatures, so. Alright, so just quick working on getting some shadows into Viktor here. We're going to highlight his shirt, tunic thing, and then move on to Algarath. The rest of the little detail stuff I'll do later. I think a lot of like the boots and armor straps and stuff are going to be black anyway. And that's just a little bit harder to get on the camera. And of course I get some green on his cape here. Thanks, Fabius. I've been having fun. I'm using a lot of these Chimera colors, and the paints are just so vibrant. Oh, wait, that's not the one I want. I need the white. The neat thing about them, the Chimera colors, is that they're pure pigment paints. So like each paint is a single pigment, like none of it's mixed to get other colors. So when you mix them together, instead of sometimes getting unexpectedly muddy, they really retain that like brightness. And that it just feels really amazing. All right. Yeah, they're definitely kind of different. Like, the texture and stuff is all pretty similar. Their texture-wise, like, consistency, thickness, they're kind of closer to Vallejo. and Reaper, in my opinion, than like P3 or Scale 75. But the pigment brightness is, I've really been enjoying. So I'm just getting some highlights here in the shirt. And honestly, like, they do mix really well. You can make, so there's only like 13 of them plus a medium that the set comes with. But you can make every color, you know. They're really geared towards mixing, but I have been enjoying like the bright, pure look of them so much that I haven't really even gotten quite to that yet. Yeah, it's one of the things that teaching, for me, the toughest thing to do is to convince people to branch out and away from some of the more set, like, this is your base, this is your shade, this is your highlight. And getting them to feel comfortable with mixing colors. And there's there's nothing wrong with sticking to what you're comfortable with, but like when you want to get better, you have to be willing to sort of take some of that and be like, oh, I'm gonna try to do this and mix some more. So I'm adding a little bit of yellow to his sleeve here. He's got this headlamp, and I did some kind of quick and dirty OSL. But we're just gonna carry it a little down his arm. Yeah, it can definitely help get, especially if you want to go for more of like a unique look that's just your own, mixing colors can be really, really valuable. Alright, I'm just going to add some straight yellow to this. It's more of a glaze at this point. It's been sitting in my palette for a bit, so it's pretty wet and thinned, but it works out just fine. Get a little touch on his shirt down here. Alright, and then I'm going to add a little more white to this green. And a teeny bit of yellow. Just to make it a more vibrant, slightly acid green, for the final highlight here on his shirt. And then we will put him aside for the moment and work on Viktor. Not Viktor. Algarath. I've had a huge coffee today, and apparently it is still not enough for my brain to function appropriately. So just popping out some of these wrinkles and folds here. I don't have a whole lot of shirt. But enough enough that I sort of want to make sure that this color is standing out in contrast with the purple that's next to it. And then the sleeve. Alright, so there we go. We've got a little bit of the candlelight still coming down this side, and the rest of the green still packs a little bit of a punch. So we're going to go ahead and set him aside, and then we're going to pick up Algarath, our demon friend. We're going to make him I want to do like a red, a nice demon-y sort of red, and then I think the two of them together will, you know, be pretty interesting. I'm going to start with a mix, I think, of red oxide, so it's not like super vibrant just yet, and then I'm going to add a little bit of the Chimera red in. And he's got some good bony stuff, some, I don't know, they're like metal spikes that are sticking through his skin, and some interesting like chains and rings and whatnot. So we'll end up working some like purples into him, and the Chimera Magenta, which has like been one of my absolute favorites recently. go ahead and mix that all up and see kind of where we are. I think that's actually a really great starting place where what I've got. It's a little bit of red, a little bit of magenta, and in more of that like red oxide, so it's kind of like this almost blood color. Let's see. I'm actually gonna grab my size 2 brush just to get a little more coverage down a little quicker here. And that's the other thing I like about these paints is they cover really well. I wanted to make Algarath look very traditionally like demon-y, especially since the other demon that Viktor can summon is very different looking. Dorgokan is the one he can now summon for, or another option for him to summon for 5s. And just the sculpt looks almost very aquatic. So I'll probably lean into that a little more heavily once we get our hands on him at Warfare Weekend. He's got kind of some of these like open, bony sores or whatnot. You know, overall, pretty gross. Like they're bursting through his skin. So a lot of today is probably going to be like, you know, how to paint red and make it look vibrant and awesome. Red can be a very tricky color, as can purple, especially since, like, as you highlight, you either go into, for red, like, pinks or, like, orangey yellows. And then you sort of lose some of that like actual red look. So at some point here, I'm sure we will go back with some inks. But we got a ways to go still. And he's going to be really interesting. He's got a lot of like extra texture and folds and stuff in his skin. So that'll be fun to pick out all those little highlights. I'm mostly just trying to get a good base coat here. You know, he is mostly entirely skin, or at least this demon skin. So I want to make sure, certainly that I've got some good coverage. and he's got some like skin tearing over the muscles here. And get in and around it on the underside of the tail. I've always thought that you know, for a demon, like, Algarath looks a little spindly, I suppose, but like just some of his abilities are really nice, like the taunt. But he is pretty unique as far as, like, demon miniatures that I've seen. You know, most of them have, like, the big bat wings and, you know, bulky muscles. And I suppose the one thing about Algarath that is very classic demon is like this long tongue. There's a lot to base coat here for sure. But I like the thought of having him be so bright to stand out. On the table too. Especially with like his taunt ability. I feel like the red is like, hey, look at me, look at me. Don't look at the squishy little halfling dude over there. Just sort of making sure I get a good solid coat everywhere. Around these little pokey bones is easy to miss. It's like he's got some of these like layers of ripped skin sort of over his like around his head and neck. Just say the dude is real gross and scary. Of course, getting in around some of these horns is going to be so fun. People ask me why, like, well, I've gotten my brushes to last for X number of years, and I'm over here replacing mine every 3 months. Like, even when I take care of them real good, like, just these pokey things are so rough. And of course, I think it's worth it, and I don't mind replacing my brushes frequently. But there's definitely a reason why. Alright, let's get these arms done. Probably a good thing that he's all mostly just this color. Because I totally have been getting paint all over these little spindly extra bits. Just a little left to go here. Sometimes I totally wish I could, like, wave a magic wand and be done with base coating, like, immediately. If I were being really smart, I probably would have done this ahead of time with the airbrush. But apparently I have not been that smart. That's okay, it can be a chill, meditative base painting stream. Although, I mean, we've only been at it an hour and I've got easily two left to go. And then honestly, as I kind of think about it, with all these sort of like looser wrinkles, shading wise, he may actually benefit from a wash as far as shading things goes. I frequently don't use washes for skin just because it tends to pool a little weird. And I may still like emphasize, you know, the muscle forms and stuff, but there's a lot of texture going on. And then like under and around some of these pokey things. Alright, just finishing up getting some color on this arm. And then he's looking like one very red demon. Ooh. And then apparently I completely missed this. He's got a big piece of flesh in his hand. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get that out. Yeah, maybe not. Maybe that just sort of gets worked around for now. Alright, so now I've got a nice red demon. I normally don't do washes for skin. I think it ends up turning things a little bit muddy sometimes. I am going to do one for him though, because he's just got a lot of like texture and folds and stuff in his skin. So I'm going to go ahead and make that up with some of the base coat, some of the darker violet, a little bit of blue, and then medium and water. And I'm still using all of the Chimera paints. There's no, no reason you can't make washes out of whatever paint you have available to you. So I'm mixing a little violet, a little of the phthalo blue red shade, which is closer to violet than the other blue. And then a little bit of what we had for the base coat going on. And then we're going to use a little bit of their satin medium, and then I'm going to use a little bit of my just regular matte medium. We'll mix it all up, water it down, and then put it on and let it do its thing. But I'm actually going to save some of this without the water, just as a shadow, like, so I can go back and do more like specific placement of shadows. And then with the medium, of course, I've got plenty of paint. And this is sort of turned into a really nice, like burgundy, almost a wine color. And we're gonna use a larger brush still. Of course, as I get water all over my little backdrop thing here. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and really get this on there, and it will change his overall shade. But we are, of course, coming back with more shadows, more highlights. Plenty more work to go. And it's one of the reasons why I went with such a bright red to begin with. And eventually we will we'll be using some ink to sort of reclaim some of that very vibrant red anyway. So I'm not really worried about it for now. So like I said, I don't typically use washes for skin. I like to be more deliberate a lot of the time with how the shadows and highlights and stuff I'll get placed. But since he has so much texture and stuff to his actual skin, I feel like it has a place here. And it just goes to show, like, you know, no matter how, you know, how you progress, like, all of these are tools you can use. Every technique has worth. Even on, like, you know, high-end tabletop competition. And then I think this is also going to help some of these spikes and stuff. End up with a little more definition. The alarm clock in this song is totally freaking me out. Oh well. There's limited options when it comes to DRM free music. There may be some later. This is all 100% Chimera Colors paint so far. But yeah, he's very red. I wanted to go super, you know, like very traditional demon. Since the other demon that's coming out in November is totally like non-traditional. Alright, I think I have this wash everywhere. And we're just... It's already really starting to dry very well across the legs, so... Yeah, Dorgacon, I look at him and I'm like, this guy is a sea demon, like 100%. So for him, I'll probably be doing more like aquas and blues and such. So for Algarath here, I wanted to go like the really traditional, like hellspawn sort of demon. But yeah, Dorgacon's got like claws and like tentacle eyes, and there's a lot of good stuff there, but it's totally, you know, a little off the wall. Which again, I think is kind of neat that there's so much variety. And then the sculptor or the digital artist, the concept artist, he's definitely one of their more sort of out there guys, which it's nice to have some of that extra variety. I think, because, you know, you get Andrew and Jeff, and they're like super, they really like the really traditional fantasy stuff. But they give this other guy, Helgi, like free reign on some of these other things, just to like Dorg and I think he also did the illustration for Nephany. So it's like you get different viewpoints, I think, in these models, which makes it a really enticing and like a line of models that just has something for everyone. So anyway, we're kind of letting we're gonna let him dry a little bit more. He's got some pools and stuff that are still, and then we'll come back to him. I think I'm just gonna grab some black and do some of like Viktor's armor and straps and stuff while I'm waiting for that to dry. Some days are all about the base painting, I guess. But once we get into, like, you know, some of the deeper shadows for Algarath and then the highlights, I think he's gonna end up just really, really popping very well. Alright, I think I'm gonna go ahead and do this. A more black fur. I started Viktor on Tuesday on stream. Apart from some of his face and skin tones, which I did in a class over the weekend, I did then come back and sort of punch things up a little more, give him a little more detail. But then we did like some of his cape and coat, because there's with some candlelight effects, because he's got a candle down here and he's got one in this like headlamp up here. So we've got some candlelight being cast onto his collar. And we did this really ragged, beat up leather, you know, almost skin-like sort of cape, because the texture was too good not to. I mean, and he's a warlock. He's not a nice dude. Nice dudes don't play around with demons. So again, we're kind of just, we're doing this until the wash I put on Algarath is dry and we are ready to do further shadows and highlights and such. And thankfully the wash seems to be drying pretty quick over here. But I figured it's better to make good use of my time than just, you know. A lot of times when I'm doing this and I'm like not on stream, I'll just fuck around on my phone. It's one of the reasons I like streaming. Like, I've got 3 very dedicated hours to painting, and I actually get a lot done. I feel like I typically feel like I'm kind of a slow painter. Because I like to, I like to play with some extra techniques, fancy stuff. But, maybe it's just that I spend too much time on my phone. And it sort of makes me feel like I should stream more, but I know that I'm like, the other time that I would probably choose to do it is like Wednesday mornings, and I'm not a morning person. And I feel like Wednesday morning streams would just, they would suffer from me having a lack of energy. In general, it's difficult for me to like keep up. Thanks, Fabius. In general, it's difficult for me to keep up like the constant stream of babble. Like I tend towards quiet. A lot of the time on my own, I'm totally an introvert. So, maybe it would be like silent Wednesday mornings. So anyway, like I said, I'm just getting some more base coats on Viktor here while Algarath has his wash drying. So, funny story about Viktor. When Chad put him together, he did not realize exactly how he was, like, particularly this arm was supposed to go. And he's kind of, like, stroking his goatee thoughtfully. Only Chad totally did not notice, like, that the goatee was in the hand and that it attached to the chin. So he had the arm kind of, like, off to the side a little. And then eventually he looked at it and was like, what is he holding? It looks like he's holding like an ice cream cone without the ice cream. And then he went and looked back at the picture on the website and was like, oh shoot, that is his goatee and it's supposed to be attached to his chin. So he had to like break the arm off and try again. So yeah, part of me still kind of wants to do like a goatee-less Viktor holding an ice cream cone. Maybe because demons love ice cream, I don't know. Alright. Come on, Algarath. Yeah, I think Chad played with Viktor like that. At least 3 or 4 games before he was like, wait, what is this? One of the other reasons I sort of want to get the armor and straps and stuff in is I think there's probably more shirt sleeve. But I can't really see it right at the moment, like what's sleeve, and like there's definitely a strap here. And sometimes you can't really tell until you get paint on what the heck is going on. And we're still waiting just a little bit across the chest and underarms here for Algarath to be dry. But here on the back you can sort of tell that that wash has settled really nicely into some of these textured skin areas. So like I said, I don't do a whole lot of washes on skin anymore, but there are times when it's just like the right tool for the job. Alright, this all looks like arm. This looks like there's a narrow strip of shirt in there, in between the armor, this strap, and maybe that's more shirt. And then the other sort of interesting thing that is not immediately apparent when you're looking at the model is there's this little like pouch down here, but it's got these 3 little tubes coming off of it, and it's like sewed along the side. And I think he's made a bag out of a heart. Which is both neat and kind of gross. the little strap of the armor, elbow pads. Alright, and then almost. It's really just like under the arms there. Alright, and he's got these nice tall boots. These extra little straps across too. I might do those some kind of color, either the green or the purple. Just because I feel like everyone should have cool, fancy matching footwear. And then of course this leg is a little different. It's like his pants come all the way down, and then there are straps around. Alright, well, get a little more of this boot in. And then we'll go back to Algarath because he should be dry enough. Just get some of this from back here. Alright, we've got one pant leg tucked in and one not. Just so weird. Alright, back to good old Algarath. We'll put Viktor aside, having done a little bit more for his base coats and whatnot. Oh man, my allergies today. I guess we're in something called peak week, which is where people who have allergies or asthma, I don't have asthma, but I do end up having seasonal allergies, are just like miserable with ragweed and pollen and stuff, so hopefully I'm not like sniffling too much. I did take my allergy meds this morning because ooh, it's been rough. Okay. We're going to go ahead and add some more of that sort of wine red shadow. More particularly to like the lower forms of things where the You know, the wash was more for like these textures in here in some of these, you know, zones where I'll be highlighting more. But we're going to reinforce some of the shadows, and having more contrast like that, you know, more dark shadows, more bright highlights, that's what makes these models really pop and stand out. So I have some of the shadow mixed up that I did not add water to. There is still some medium in it, and that'll be fine. It'll sort of end up going on a little more like a glaze that way anyway, which is certainly not a bad thing. And with that in mind, I probably don't really need to hang on to my blending brush in my mouth. It's just such a habit. But this way I can talk a little more clearly. So I'm using the shadow color that I made into a wash at the moment, and I will add or make a darker one that's more like straight blue violet. And then make even darker shadows. But for now, I'm sort of just reinforcing the dark areas. You know, sort of outlining some of the muscle groups. Which, of course, for a demon with these extra long legs is a bit weird. But if you sort of treat it like halfway between a human leg and an animal leg, I think we sort of get the idea. Reinforce some in between the toes. And then particularly anything that's got like a significant overhang, like the underside of this leg here. It's good to make those places like extra dark. Again, it just sort of helps your overall contrast. And I think a lot of painters who are looking to get better struggle with getting the contrast right. I know I have for a really long time, and I still like really have to focus on do I have enough contrast? Is my contrast there? And I would say really only in the past year has that have I really started like being able to execute it. Like I've known that it's like, oh, I need more contrast, but having the guts to go like really dark and then really bright is not an easy thing to do. Alright, so we're adding more dark shadows to Algarath. And this is the same color that we used for the wash. But it is just reinforcing the wash a little extra. And then we're still going to go back with even yet a darker shadow. One that's more like violet, blue, and really push. Yeah, I am too. I'm really looking forward to the classes. I think we have some really awesome Judgement models for the topics. But there are also like there's just some really great teachers and instructors coming. I know like Chris Surrey has really helped me in my painting. You know, talking to him, listening to him. He hasn't been teaching classes for super long, but they're just really good. Yeah, and Patrick, we're making him even more chiseled. Although he's got this like really neat, weird split. And his face, it looks like he's got this like loose layered skin. Which is more going to come out in the highlights, but is totally... Yeah, he's got like this very barrel chest like rib cage, but he's got like these little muscles all along here, underneath. highlighting this model is where it's going to get like just crazy. Like right now I'm sort of sticking, you know, sticking the shadows in under all these muscle forms and stuff, but as we go in with the highlights, not only are we going to be picking out, you know, all the tops of the muscles and stuff, but also all of this texture. Dude's got just a shit ton of like wrinkly skin texture. Yeah, you see so many demons too that are like big and bulky. And I get the feeling for this one, like if he existed in real life, being a little wiry, like there's no way you're outrunning this demon. He's just gonna get you. These are the things that go through my head, like, oh, if this demon existed in real life, like, I would not be able to outrun him. I've probably always had rather too good of an imagination. Leads to, yeah. Pack my holy water. But no, I definitely sometimes like, I would say like get these things almost like stuck in my head, and then I end up like going to sleep and having a dream where like they're real and I'm, you know, my brain, I tell you. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and mix up that darker shadow color with the violet and the darker blue shade. That's in the Chimera paints, it's the phthalo blue red shade. And that just means it's a little closer to violet than it is to green. One of the weird things you learn studying color theory is like there is no one true blue. Like the primary colors are kind of a lie. Which is very interesting, but like, you know, there's a red shade that tends more towards orange and a red shade that tends more towards violet. So like, and if you mix them with, you know, there's kind of like two primaries for each of the technically like red, yellow, blue. So there's like a red that tends towards violet and a red that tends towards orange. And there's a yellow that tends towards orange and a yellow that tends towards green. And there's a blue that tends towards green and a blue that tends towards violets. So like if you mix the red that tend towards orange with the blue that tends towards violet, you're going to get like just a really muddy, awful color. Like it is weird and complex and has to do with the way that light refracts, and pigments interacting and stuff, but if you're doing a lot of paint mixing, like, it's really useful to know. And I think a lot of people get frustrated because they're like, well, this is the color wheel, and every red that I have, red plus blue equals purple, but why is this purple just dull and gross? That's because they don't know the primary colors are a lie. All right, I am going to add a little bit of medium to this just to sort of, if I put this paint straight on it, it's really, really powerful. So I'm going to make it almost like a glaze in itself. And then I am definitely going to want my blending brush for this. So what I just put in is Liquitex Matte Medium, and the Chimera paints do come with a satin medium of their own, and it is really nice. And for me, since I'm used to working with P3 paints, which have a little bit more of a satin finish regardless, I like that I have that option. But for this, like, I'm just using my Liquitex. At least for this darker shadow. Because I have more of it, so I want to be sparing with the satin medium that comes with this. And I don't really want my shadows to be too shiny. So this is kind of going to help us really push like the volumes of these muscle forms in Algorath. So let's go ahead and pull some out. And then I am doing a little more of my two brush blending here, just because this shadow is a little more powerful and I don't want to have like very heavy edges. So I'm just sort of feathering out those edges. So this bottle of medium I have had, I think it's the first one I picked up when I first started, and like I've had it so long that the cap of the bottle broke and I had to like transfer what bottle it was in. But the medium itself is still totally fine. It's been like 8 years, I want to say. And was probably about $5 at the art store. It has lasted a long, long time. So you can kind of see I'm working here along the side of the chest a little. And you can see like how much darker this is getting. All right. Have a good day, Patrick. Good luck in your lab. Alright, we're gonna really hit the underside of the leg a little more. And we got a little too much of a line sort of on the edge here, so I'm just going back and blending it out. Again, we sort of want some of these to be very dark shadows because they're overhung anyway. And having some extra, like a lot of dark shadows on the lower legs and then more highlights up here on the face will overall help draw focus to the face and be more interesting because there's overall more contrast. And honestly, Algarath's got a lot of leg. So we're just, I've got like no good place to brace my finger here. This is so pokey. So we're just sort of deepening some of these shadows on his leg. And I added a little bit of medium to this paint so that it goes on a bit like a heavy glaze. Oh, and then of course I've got a dog hair in my brush. The life of living with a fluffy husky. Wouldn't trade it for anything though. Alright, and he's got just a little bit of like extra muscle definition in here. That I want to throw a bit of this in. Not a lot. We do want to get a lot more on like the underside of the tail. Yeah. She is a goofball. She's taking a nap right now on the couch. Just like out. But later at like 4 o'clock she's got it figured out that that's when we stop, that's when we go out and get Chad from the train. It's like she's smart. She's like, okay, it's 4 o'clock, it's time to be crazy. She's usually a good girl during streams. Usually, not always. Of course, those are fun too, because then she comes and is like howling at me for attention. So, you can kind of see as I've done like this leg, you know, how much more contrast there is already, just with this extra shadow. And this is after the wash that I did, which is great to pick up some of this like texture. But a lot of people sort of stop there, and sometimes it's not enough. Yeah. I love cats. I think they're hilarious creatures. Unfortunately, I'm allergic and I can't have them anymore. But I had a great cat growing up. She was the most tolerant ever. We found her as a kitten, like she was just a straight barn cat. And she grew up with 2 Labradors, so she kind of thought that she was a dog and would like flop over for belly rubs, just like one of our dogs. But she would let us like dress her up in doll clothes and carry her around in like purses and stuff, just purring the whole time. In some ways I look back and I'm like, oh, I feel so sorry for this cat, but she was fine with it. I figure, like, you know, she had, like, she could have run away, but instead was like, whatever. Yeah, I loved her so much. And sometimes I'm sad that I can't still have cats. But like, it makes my eyes, nose, and throat absolutely miserable anymore. Alright. There's just, there's a lot of shadows to do on this guy. Because he's like, once I finish this skin color, he's like gonna be done. Mostly. Yeah, we do have huskies. Huskies can be very cat-like, I swear sometimes. We only have the one for now. But she'll do the thing that cats do where she like licks the side of her paw and like rubs her face. I'm like, you're such a cat. So yeah, as we get up into here, we won't use quite so much of this darker shadow, but there's a lot of them. I want to make sure to get like the underside of the tail. and sort of blend that up on both sides. Again, he's so pokey. I'm looking for a place to like brace my finger just a little. I keep getting stabbed. But anyway, yeah, this contrast is going to be really necessary to make him a more interesting model, since he doesn't have, you know, a whole lot of like extra stuff going on. You know, he is skin and horns and claws and teeth. Alright, I think we are finally done with like the legs and tail. So while I know we totally started with a wash and then we did more, spending the extra time with this darker and additional shadows in the end is going to make a really big difference to how this model turns out. Especially once we get to highlights. Alright. Trying to do a little more around the sides here, because those are kind of, he's got a lot of like heavy back muscles and stuff. And that's kind of going to be pretty dark. Like around in here. You know, it just makes him look real big and muscly. He's got like some of this around the shoulder blades. Again, since this guy is just mostly skin, this very, you know, red demon skin, it's, contrast, just having enough contrast is the most important thing we can do for him, you know, to make him stand out and look really good, since like the number of colors that he's going to have is very limited, as far as like overall, like, you know, red skin, bone, you know, maybe some black and metal and stuff. But he's not going to have like a whole lot of, you know, extra crazy colors or anything. And sometimes that can make a model like this difficult. I think there are a lot of times where people who make models just pack in a lot of extra unnecessary details to sort of fill the space because they feel like that'll make it interesting. As much as everybody loves them, I think GW is a big time abuser of, oh, let's just add a whole bunch of details to our models and that'll make them interesting. And it's a lot harder to make an interesting model that doesn't have all of that extra frou-frou. And it's a lot harder to paint them so that they look, really neat. Which is why when you do come across a model like that, you want to focus on your contrast, because contrast will make it interesting. So I know I'm spending like a long time doing shadows here, but in the end, the shadows and highlights are what's going to make him cool. Which, of course, is not to say, like, if you have a lot of extra details, it can't be a cool model. Just that sometimes not having those makes it harder. And I'm just kind of going to get in here with some of this weird neck stuff. Like, he's got a lot of, like, almost loose skin flap type stuff. So I'm just going to outline that with this dark shadow color. And then here, get some of this along the, maybe, along the side of the neck. These horns and ears. Kind of gonna even outline some of this weird neck skin. And then I just need to do a little bit more on this arm over here, and then we can probably move on to some highlights. I've totally got like a fuzz in here. All right, there we go. And then, just as a sort of word of caution, even though I am doing two-brush blending, I am very much making sure that I am rinsing out my blending brush before I reform it with my mouth. I'm rinsing out my painting brush. Like, I don't, you know, typically I've used P3 paints, which are non-toxic, and like European food grade rated safe. You know, these Chimera colors probably aren't, particularly because they're much closer to like artist acrylic pigments. You know, when I'm done here, I will go rinse out my water cup and like make sure that I'm rinsing my brush in clean water, because again, just to be safe. So I know I'm a brush licker, and that's like, oh, it's not safe, but I'm like, I'm being very careful actually. So there's the caveat there of the two brush blending with non-P3 paints. So yeah, most of this stream so far has been like just really pushing these dark shadows, and unfortunately I don't think we're gonna get too much in the way of highlights. We're almost there. All right, I would say that that is probably about where we want to be for shadows. Yeah, and particularly with this guy, like, he's so much of this color, like, you need to, you know, you need to have enough shadows. Oh, stuff's falling over here somewhere. Yep. All of my inks are falling down the crack in between. There we go. So I'm probably not, he's got a lot of like loose skin, that, the highlights are going to bring out even more. So I don't think I'll do like a lot of like extra texture spots like I did on, the Totem Huntress. Like, I did those on her because she's got these sort of smoother areas. But yeah, when the skin is a little more rough, you've got more space to like play that up with the highlights, which is what I'll be doing for him. So what I'm gonna do is, I get paint all over my fingers apparently, is go ahead and make up some more of the base coat, but I'm going to use a little less red oxide, a little more of the red and magenta, just to make it more vibrant and more saturated. Fabius, I'm glad you're like just visually seeing this, that's helping. So for the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to mix up the first sort of highlight, and then hopefully that'll help give you an indication of like how to start that, and then picking out the textures too. So get some paint made up. I've got like this. It's almost time to add more water to my wet palette. It's drying out a little bit. Alright, so a little less red oxide, a little more red, a little magenta, and a little touch of orange. Yeah, Patrick, we can start thinking about November. I'm not really sure what, what I necessarily feel like I want to do. The next one that people seem to really be interested in was non-metallic metals. And I'm like, I'm not super sure if I'm like the right person to do that. Might just do like an overall generic metals class. Alright, I am going to add a little bit of this orange. And again, these are super powerful. I'm going to add a little bit of medium just to thin out the concentration of pigment as I sort of knock all the things over on my desk and spray paint everywhere. Alright. Yeah, the two would go really well together. Alright, medium. But yeah, I'm not doing anything before Warfare Weekend, which is the 8th through the 10th. It's that second weekend of November. And then I don't know, I may honestly not be up for a class like the following weekend, and then I think we're getting into Thanksgiving, which is tricky. Anyway, so it's something to think about and mull on. Okay, so I'm mixing up a highlight color. It is a little more, a little brighter, a little more orange than the base color that we started with. It's still not like super, super bright. Like vibrant red. That will come more towards the end when we use some ink. But again, that'll be a little later still. All right, let's sort of start with kind of around this knee. And more than like really smooth blends or anything right now, I kind of want to keep the integrity of some of this like wrinkly skin texture. So while I'm being like mindful of where, you know, these larger forms of the muscle are, it's definitely gonna be you know, have some more brush strokes and whatnot. Got paint everywhere. So some of this, where the skin is stretched a little tighter, it will sort of pile on the highlight just a little more. And then much later there are these really nice veins and such in the sculpt. So I'll want to like pick those out once we get up to like the brighter ones. I will certainly like trace those out with my brush. And we're not going to use as many highlights like on the legs as we are up in the chest and back. But we are going to get some back in here. And then it's kind of, you know, brightening these up one step at a time. And then I made quite a bit of this first highlight, and we're going to kind of keep adding brighter, you know, the brighter colors, further highlights to it. And then I know this one's not super different even from the base coat. Like it is a little brighter, it's a little more red. But it does sort of help us reclaim some of the area that was like tinted by the wash that we put on. And just reinforce some of the, you know, the red saturation. Here, let's see if we can see it a little more across the top of the tail. And since I do have some medium in here, it is a little more transparent. But again, that's going to kind of help things blend without me using a lot of my blending brush. Let's stay. So again, kind of getting some more of this across the top of the tail. You know, reclaiming some of the brighter reds. And we'll probably go up to oranges and yellows almost, just to get enough contrast, and then sort of tie everything back together with some red ink. But at the moment we've got a lot of shadow and not a whole lot of mid-tone. And again, there's a lot of this like texture that I'm of like stretched, wrinkly skin that I'm just like not even bothering to blend. I'm just putting the highlight on it. It's like a series of lines almost. And where it's, the lines are not like very large, like here, I'm doing more like just dots with the brush. So pretty much I just sort of keep building from here. Red is tricky. You need to go very dark with the shadows and very bright with the highlights. So I will probably do something in the realm of 3-4 different highlights, at least. Whereas typically my normal amount is like 2. So again, we're starting to bring up the red. Anyway, I'll probably go ahead and pause here. It's just about 4 o'clock. I want to thank you all for joining me, for hanging out and painting a lot of red, doing a lot of shadows, a lot of base coating. But here we've got Viktor and Algarath together, at least so far. They're still both work in progress. Algarath needs a lot more highlights, and Viktor needs like boots and pants and stuff. But if you haven't done so already, follow me on social media. I have all of that information up in my final screen. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and I do try to post ahead of time, you know, what I'm going to be working on streams and when I'm doing them for sure. And I should be back next week, Tuesday evening. Hopefully Viktor and Algarath will be done then. And I got a lot more stuff to work through here. Commissions and more Judgement for us. I've got Hoxa primed and ready to go too. And he is just a cool model. Like, I've never seen a more daring model than one of these ones I've got coming up. So hopefully you will join me for more streams. I want to wish everyone a really happy, restful weekend, and I will catch you next week. All right, bye.